Today's video is brought to you by Squarespace, my go-to for building a website and online shop. Hi everyone! Today's tutorial is the first in a two-part series all about edges in oil painting. Edges are so important because they help describe depth and form, and they guide the viewer's eye to the focal point. And they're just an often overlooked skill that is crucial to mastering the craft of oil painting. So we're going to be using a monochromatic palette just to keep things simple. I'm using Flake White Replacement and Ivory Black, both from Gamblin. I usually like to pre-mix a few gray midtones just to help make the painting process more efficient. So my usual monochromatic palette is just pure white, light gray, medium gray, dark gray, and then pure black. If you'd like to watch the extended real-time version of this tutorial with voiceovers that I recorded as I was painting, plus access to hundreds of hours of exclusive content and monthly art rewards, feel free to check out my Patreon at patreon.com/happydartist. It's a space where I share more in-depth content for those of you who want to dive deeper into technique, process, and the behind-the-scenes moments that don't always make it into these quick YouTube videos. In this video, aka part 1, we are just going to practice rendering edges of different hardness and softness, starting off with the hardest edge possible. Edges are basically where two adjacent values meet each other. I like to think of them as the transition where the two values touch. A hard edge like this one is almost like a paper cutout. We have a tile of black paint simply meeting a tile of white paint with no work or care put into polishing up the transitional area where they meet. I don't often use edges like this in my work, as I like to polish and refine all my edges at least a little bit. But this type of hard edge can be found when you're painting rocks, branches, and other sharply defined forms. This is also the most common type of edge used in value studies where we are not worrying about rendering. Anyway, I mostly demonstrated the sharpest edge just so we can see the contrast between that and an edge where we put in some effort to refine that transition between the two values. Here I would consider the edge still defined, but it's polished and softened by me using a smaller brush to add some transitional grays between the pure black and pure white. An edge could be softened by blending it with a blending brush, or it can give the illusion of being soft by creating a gradient of transitional halftones that start in the first value and end in the second value. This is where a smaller brush really comes in handy. Notice the difference between the hard, unfinished edge on the left and the still defined but also refined edge on the right. From far away, they both look like hard edges, but up close, the one on the right is so much more fleshed out and just makes the entire painting look more well-crafted. For example, let's zoom in on a close-up of a Bouguereau painting. Notice how even when the figure is clearly defined in the front of the background, the edge outlining the silhouette of the figure is still relatively soft and defined, as opposed to untreated and harsh. Okay, on to the next. The third type of edge we are working on is a super soft edge, almost like a complete loss of edge, pretty close to a perfect gradient. One might think that we can just put black paint on one end and white paint on the other end and smooth those two together with a blending brush. But that is actually not the best way to make a super soft feathered edge. The way we're going to do it is by laying down tiles of ever-increasing values, starting from black, then dark gray, then medium gray, then light gray, then finally white. And we're going to soften and blend the edges between each adjacent value tile. In a real-life color painting scenario, we may want to have more granular control over how quickly we transition from one color to another, as well as any custom transitional colors in between. So this is why I always prefer to pre-mix or prepare the colors you'll need to give the illusion of a soft edge by transitioning colors of ever-increasing values and then just softening the edges in between them. I prefer that over just blending things together on the canvas with a blending brush. I like having that control over what colors are going to be in that transition, because sometimes the colors that result from you mixing value number 1 and value number 2 together is not actually what looks best, especially on the human body. And I'll give you an example, which is sometimes when we transition from a darker shadow on the face to a lighter mid-tone, that in between color, we actually want to manually add a pop of something with more chroma, more saturation. It's something I do a lot in my paintings. If we just mix the dark value and the light value together on the canvas, what happens in that transitional edge would be something that's kind of gray and dull and makes the figure look really corpse-like. So I always get into the habit of just using values and granularly, meticulously creating the illusion of a soft edge to make that transition a lot more controlled and to make the end result feel more alive and warm and beautiful. The fourth and final edge exercise for this first part of the video series is going to look kind of like a glowing star. We've practiced 3 perfectly straight edges so far in varying degrees of softness, but let's try making a round curved edge. The technique is very similar, but instead of making straight vertical brush strokes, we are going to make many small curved strokes that build up to a circle. As usual, we will be laying down paint tiles of gradually increasing values, starting from black to gray halftones and then ending in white. For the final punch of white in the center, which kind of looks like a star, I will be just depositing the pure white paint into the center and letting that opaque dollop of paint shine, and I'm not going to do much blending. If I do want to soften that dollop of white, I will only blend out the outer edges, but I will not be blending back and forth over the kind of peak center part of it. And sometimes it takes me a few tries to gradually inch up to that level of brightness of just that pure white opaque dollop of paint. So sometimes I'll deposit the paint, blend it out, and then realize I need to deposit some more, and that's totally fine and normal. Whenever you blend or soften white paint, it'll lose some of its opacity and brightness. So if I want the brightest value to stay at its maximum potential, I usually don't blend it or touch it at all after depositing it onto the surface. And with that, we have what kind of looks like a glowing star. So that about wraps up part 1 of this edges tutorial and exercise. I hope you enjoyed watching. Feel free to practice this as many times as you want. It's an easy drill, and I think it's perfect for warming up if you haven't painted in a while too. And look out for part 2 coming up shortly. And of course, you guessed it, my eternal never-ending sale is still going on in my shop. So if you'd like 20% off your order of prints and originals, just enter the code HOLIDAY at happyd-artist.com. And if you're interested in learning more about how to paint and draw, I have lots of art educational content on my Patreon page, including exclusive video tutorials, step-by-step photo tutorials, live streams, podcasts, and even surprise art gift boxes. All available at patreon.com/happydartist. I'd love to have you join my Patreon family. A big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video and supporting the art community. I've been using Squarespace for 10 years now, and it's been an integral part of being able to make a living as an artist. Aside from their beautiful customizable templates and easy-to-use interface, Squarespace now has so many robust tools to help make website building be both effective and intuitive. There's a new design intelligence feature that uses a combination of industry experience and cutting-edge AI to help you make a website bespoke to your brand and digital identity. Squarespace takes the intimidation out of setting up an online shop with their intuitive e-commerce platform that accepts every type of payment method you can imagine, all with just a few simple clicks, so you can easily sell your work all around the world. Head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/happydartist to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Also, if you want to check out more artworks, works in progress, and just random daily artist adventures, feel free to check out my Instagram, and you can follow me at the handle @HappyDArtist.